Hey there Internet, welcome to the Hard On Gear channel where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear. I have another beautiful Tor knife to talk about. This is the Tor Viper. Very similar, if you didn't happen to notice, to my Anaconda in a lot of ways. Obviously purpose-built sort of for the same idea, tactical, military, combatives type of stuff. Something that would typically ride on, say, your plate carrier or at your hip, maybe on a gun belt. Can't imagine where else. Typically that'd be your main spots. This is a knife I picked up as sort of an EDC, practical, tactical, good at everything, really not bad at anything kind of knife. My buddy that I worked with this summer kind of liked it and ended up looking at Tor's knives for himself and put this thing through quite a bit of use this summer. As you can tell, it was carried on the fire line for a good chunk of time.
Leg! Water!
It's not what you typically imagine for an EDC knife, but he just wanted something that he could grip and rip quick with a retention ring. That would just be a nice little slicer and poker or whatnot. And ultimately, he didn't end up liking it for that purpose. Still a big fan of the knife. He may end up selling it or trading it, actually, just based on the sheath performance in the field. But fantastic little knife from Tor. Okay, so the price, if you are looking to pick this guy up, it's going to cost you $150, $160 US. And of course, because Canadian dollars, the exchange rate's not good and it's hard to get knives up here sometimes. It costs a little bit with the customs and all that. $275 Canadian at Tetragon, which is your main stop to get Tor knives in Canada. There is also the ebony wood version with the ebony wood scales, and that's going to cost $50 more, about $195 US. I didn't find any in Canadian stores, but that's an option. I don't know if that's a Gen 1 thing, and maybe the G10 handle scales that are on this are Gen 2. Let me know in the comments if you know anything about it. Talking about those handle scales, with these, I don't know what you call them, the snake lines of knives from Tor. The Anaconda has Anaconda-like scales, kind of textured into the G10, which is super nice and feels phenomenal. And the Viper, of course, has Viper pattern, a Viper pattern, I guess, etched into the G10. So kind of neat little detail they add. They've got the serpent as well, which I'm not sure what they do for the serpent because that's kind of a broad term. But anyways, yeah, cool little fact about the G10 scales. Overall length on this guy is 6.375 inches, 2.65 inch blade length. A little bit less cutting surface, 2.125 cutting surface because of a huge sharpening choil here. Almost too big. I don't know if you need that big of a sharpening choil, but no issue getting all that base of the knife sharpened with that space there. Length of the handle is 3.75 and it cuts off pretty sharply at this heavily jimped flat pommel slash, yeah, butt of the ring, I guess you'd call it. But I've seen different explanations between this and the Sock P knife, the Sock P folding knife, fixed blade, which also has the same sort of design. The, that half breed blades, little knife, the CK, whatever the hell it is. I'm sure the thumbnail's popping up somewhere right now, but that was similarly designed. And it is purpose built, and I understand you definitely have more grip. It's just preference-wise, I'm not really big on it. Oh, and hey there, viewers of the Hog channel. If you wouldn't mind, if you're enjoying this content, go ahead and click the like button as it helps the channel out and gets this video out to more knife enthusiasts. Subscribe and turn the bell on if you're into that kind of stuff. This is D2 steel. I forgot to mention that. D2 is a standard for a lot of rugged, say, like tactical fixed blades that you don't want to spend too much money on. I'm a little like on seeing it on $300 knives or $200 knives. Because you can do a lot better. That being said, maybe D2 is a better choice than the S35? Yes, S35 VN that the Tor Anaconda is made out of. Also a convex edge on this, whereas you have a full flat grind on this lovely little Viper. A high saber full flat grind. You can see there's quite a bit of space between that first bevel transition there. So kind of nice. Looks like a very slick little blade design. Super attractive looking knife if you're into this kind of design, of course. Got two Torx heads looking like they're T8. Geez, let me pull out a folding knife here so I can get a reference point. Yeah, those look like a T8. Couple of hex screws holding those in if you did want to remove those handle scales, although I don't see why you would. Made in the USA, like all Tor knives are, down in San Diego, I do believe. As always, correct me in the comments if I'm off on any of this stuff. 2.7 ounces. It's not a terribly light knife, but actually, 2.7 is not crazy. It's just the compactness. It feels like you are holding a very small, thick chunk of steel. So while it isn't a whole lot profile-wise, it's quite sturdy, definitely a decent paperweight. What's the thickness of this guy, actually? Yeah, it's 0.16 inches thick, so just shy of a fifth of an inch thick. Wow, that was hard to say. Probably even harder to conceptually grasp. But what I'm saying is that's a thick knife. You won't be bending or snapping this knife in half too easily. Potentially, you could break the tip off, but it's still quite robust. And I don't think you'll have issues like I did with the slightly thinner tip, which used to be on the Tor after I reprofiled it. I'm not sure off the top of my head, or could I find off the initial search in the specs what the coating is. It doesn't stay on as long as some, I believe most DLCs will stay on quite a bit longer. I do not think this is a DLC. I think it's some kind of other Cerakote or a little bit thinner of a coating. Comment section, again, be my friend, help me out here. Give you a few size comparisons here if you want to get a better idea if this thing is what you're looking for. So there's the Montana Knife Company Speed Goat, freaking fantastic knife, and the Tor Anaconda. So there's a few similar looking. Let's get, what do we got for another tactical looking black fixed blade? How about the Ghost Strike from Gerber? Actually very similar. So there's your reference point. And I just ignore the little paracord pommel that I added here, and it's about the same size. Well, obviously quite a bit differently built, and the ring takes up quite a bit of handle room. Yeah, the blade's a touch longer, but yeah, more or less the same size and the same ballpark at least as that Ghost Strike from Gerber. I'm gonna pull out couple of folding knives, cold steel, 8015, and let's look at the Benchmade Super Freak. Two big, thick fellas, and they make the Viper look quite tiny. Let's take a peek at the rats. Model 1, Model 2. And a couple that don't get as much time on the camera lately. We'll look at the Kershaw Blur. My only spring-assisted knife. Legal in Canada, in case you're wondering. As long as it's assisted and not like a button-operated or switchbladey type of a thing, then you're pretty much good to go in Canada. The laws are kind of weird, and they make you think you can't carry any folding knife in Canada, but it's, yeah, it's a little bit broader than that. That's the Spyderco Delica, by the way, underneath, which is just a little bit bigger than our little Viper. The sheath I'll talk about really quickly. Here it is, very similar to my Anaconda sheath, same concept. He's got their inside the waistband attachment on there. They have all kinds of different mounting options with the Molly clips and tech locks. I've got the Ulti Clip Slim on my Tor sheath here. Oh hey, there's my inside the waistband clip for my Tor. But there's 4 or 5 different mounting options, maybe more. They keep adding a couple actually, now that I think about it. They just put a new video out with more mounting options. But different stuff for whatever kind of kit you're running these knives on. They are, again, more built for that tactical Molly setup sort of thing. The sheaths, when you first get them, have a foam, or not foam, but like a felt liner on the inside, and they don't really have a snapping retention like other fixed blades. Let me find, ooh, here's a treat. I haven't done a video on this yet because I've been super slack, but I've got my first Montana Knife Company knife. The sheaths are almost as good as, well, no, I think they are the best sheath I've ever had on a fixed blade. But if you'll notice, there's a little bit of a snapping click to get the knife in and out of the sheath. And that's a solid retention. I've got that set pretty tight right now as well. But not something you find on these Tor sheaths. Maybe some of their non-tactical knives, they've got some that are more like field designed. Maybe they'd have something different, but these sheaths were designed with that felt liner and the lack of retention to be like a stealthy, super silent, don't accidentally get shot in the face for being too noisy, drawing your knife kind of a sheath. As pointed out by the owner of this knife, with this being such a short blade, this is really unreliable, and he's had this tightened up about as much as I think he can without kind of like screwing up this little rubber mount in the inside, but it's needs to be remolded, or just, yeah, a different sheath option would be nice from Tor. If anyone from Tor is watching this, feel free to talk amongst yourselves about or comment down below. Let me know if I don't know anything about what I'm talking about. Maybe you guys do have a different option that I'm unaware of, but this is not the most practical design for somebody who's not planning on carrying it in a combat setting. Now, these knives are designed with that in mind, so I'm kind of going out of their little niche. Most people don't need or want this for your EDC carry, but let's say you do. Maybe we don't need to be super stealthy tactical, and we want sheaths that don't A, have our knives falling out, and B, when you're getting used to sheathing and unsheathing this, you'll notice chunks of that, I believe it's a felt, are going to come out, and the adhesive and that felt will get stuck, little chunks and areas on your knife. And it's super annoying. And I know if you keep them well lubed up and you're very precise about putting them in, taking them out right, perfectly aligned with the sheath, and not the wrong way, obviously, then you won't have any issues. But I pretty much got to the point where I purposely went and reamed all that stuff out of there just to get rid of it. Once I set the tension properly after I had all that stuff kind of taken out of there, it's lovely. Now, when it gets gritty and dusty, and I noticed when I had it in the woods, a little bit of debris can get caught in the very bottom of the sheath. It won't sit all the way in, and then it's pretty loose, and I've got to be a little more careful. So what I have determined with these Tor knives and these sheaths is that I do not trust them in super wooded areas or anywhere where I'm really crawling around a bunch. Same with my buddy with his sheath. He was in just different situations where if he moved or twisted or rubbed up against something, either the knife was coming out of the sheath or the whole freaking sheath was coming off. So overall, just kind of a bad experience with the sheath itself. Now, that's not to say it's not a phenomenal knife. We're both big fans of it, and the feel, the ergonomics, and what it's built for. I mean, this would be freaking great as a, say, a belt knife or an inside the waist last ditch knife for enforcement officer. Say if you were talking about pistol retention, something similar to what the K-Bar TDI was designed for. So as mentioned, the only real concern I have with this guy is the sheath. It is an issue that is so bad that even though this knife is well loved, that the owner may end up getting rid of it for something different. He may get an anaconda or a serpent, actually, funny enough, just for the longer blade length, a little bit more practical, and definitely will stay in the sheath better. But yeah, just a concern that Tor may want to address getting this dealt with. That is not something you need. Is let's say you're jumping down off an obstacle or climbing over a fence, your knife falls out, you fall on the knife. That's going to screw your operation up quite a bit. Oh, and I should mention, this knife spent the summer doing wildfire stuff, like running around the bush, camping, bush camping, like northern remote stuff, climbing up hills, carrying a lot of weight through swampy, bushy, brushy areas where everything gets caught and drug on. And it's a pretty good environment. And I'll say, like, my little experience in the Army, basic training and infantry training, there was really no situation where I felt like my gear was being abused or at risk of being lost, although nighttime. But for the most part, wildfire, you are so much harder on your stuff. Your boots get destroyed so much worse. Your gear's getting caught up on everything. You're ripping and tearing. And in that environment, this thing really was put to the test. And I don't know if I would trust this as a person who potentially could be using this for a lethal reason. Self-defense, police officer, whatever. If you're living in a cruddy area where you're allowed to carry stuff like this for self-defense, maybe that's a little bit more casual because you're not running around into weird situations where this thing could fall out. But I mean, you get out of your vehicle and this thing slips out and it's not on your hip when you need it. Yeah, all those situations are less than ideal. So something to think about. Other than that, you could always make a custom sheath for yourself or modify this and make it a little bit more tight, put it in the oven at low temperature. There's things to be done, but great knife. I wish I didn't have to say that negative about the sheath, but feel free to check Tor's selection out. They're a phenomenal company, veteran owned by a couple of brothers down in, San Diego. USA made, beautiful little blade. I guess we'll end on that rhyme. Check out the other videos on this channel popping up in the side panel of your screen here somewheres. Hard On Gear channel, signing off.